All right, so got another video for y'all real quick. This one ain't gonna be as long, but this one's gonna be about Lonzo versus Drew Holiday. Now, here's the thing. I would rather keep both if possible, only because I think finding someone to replicate what Drew does is very hard. And I think there's a comfort level he brings to the team. Now, having said that, if we have to get rid of any of them, I'm quickly throwing Drew on the bus. And here's why. Let me put this out here before I say this, though. I like Drew. I'm a Drew guy. Like, I love his game. I've always loved Drew Holiday. I honestly think he's been given a raw deal in most places. I think he is one of the better underappreciated talents in the league. So let me just put that out there. Now, having said that, here's my issues with Drew. Drew is such a raw guy as far as like ability overall that for him, when he's going to get the ball, he's going to want to do something with it. And you can't fault a guy like that with his talent level. That's like asking KD to just sit up there and pass the ball all day. It's not going to work. Number two, I think Drew isn't as good a shooter as people would try to sell you on. Like, as far as three pointing and stuff is concerned, and just, I guess, raw field goal percentage, I'm not impressed. And I think when it comes to Alvin Gentry's offense, uh, I felt like he was more a detriment in that regard. Now, I'm not going to get into the defense stuff. There's plenty of people who've already talked about that. But for Drew Holiday, it's like, what is he? What is his role to the team going forward? I don't think he has the voice. Like, okay, there's people like Draymond Green who are like rah 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 rah. I don't think he's that guy. And if you're gonna look at him to be a leader, I think because okay, here's what you got. You got Zion, you got Bi and Lonzo. I think out of all those guys, they trust Bi offensively. Even Drew does. And I think everybody on the team trusts Lonzo's IQ, if nothing else. And so both of those guys, I ain't gonna say they're kind of placid or calm, but Lonzo has never been that, but he has started being more outspoken, right? And then Bi has never been that. He's always been calm demeanor. I think on you, if you're gonna have a veteran leader, you need a little bit more like Rondo. You need a little bit more attitude, and there's just not a lot of that. And since Drew isn't kind of that kind of guy, he isn't kind of that kind of guy. Since he's not that kind of guy, and he's not like if Drew shot 41% for three, I think Drew would be perfect, honestly. But between all of that, I just don't think like okay, for instance, and I've said this before, the main reason for Alonzo's struggles has been he came in with the UCLA toolbox and he realized that shit doesn't work. And he needed an off season to try to get the skills that do work. He just hasn't had it, which is why he's been hesitant to attack. It makes sense when you go back and look at UCLA in high school. So he was always aggressive, right? So, and you could see in the games where he was feeling it, he was going. He was giving you what we expected from him offensively. So if just hear me out. If we're gonna say this offseason is gonna be great for Zoe because it's gonna improve his offenses, how much increase on offense is enough to for Lonzo for you to say, okay, we can cut Drew loose? What do I mean by that? So basically, it's on good record from that December to like March time frame. He was like 14 points a game, right? So If he's going to increase from that, think about what Bi. I know some of you guys may not be aware, but Bi had an explosion offensively on the Lakers before he got traded to the Pelicans that last little bit before the blood clots, where he was giving 31, 20 something. Like that like it just came out of nowhere. People were like, what the fuck? Like, we've been waiting on this nigga. Like, and I think for Lonzo, like, see, it's different with Bi. Bi had the tool, he had the tools, but I think they kind of just cut him loose because it's just like, look, we just need to go get the points. And I think LeBron or Rondo might have gotten his ears like, look, man, we got injuries all over, bro. You gonna have to, you got to be that nigga. And so he ascended, and I think even though he didn't have the offseason, we saw this coming at the end of the Lakers, and it was just kind of like, okay, if his arm, if the blood clots are good, that's coming, right? So you started to see it with Lonzo. I think you started to see it in certain places, in certain areas, but I think he still needed to go grind some of that out. Now, I was having a conversation with DJ last night in chat, and I was asking him because I was looking at film. I was like, man, I just looked at bubble highlights after looking at all the other. Maybe it's me, but Lonzo looks sluggish and he looked heavy. And I'm not going to get into the crux of what we discussed. Maybe we can do a collab video. We can talk about that another day. But for me, I really looked at Lonzo after looking at all that. I was like, damn, he looks heavy. He looks slow. He don't seem right. So part of that to me is like, okay, if that's the case, he didn't necessarily regress, but it was just the fact that I think the quarantine hurt him. It got him out of his usual uh, routine. And that could be detrimental to young players. It hurt a lot of young players going into the bubble. It even hurt some veterans. But my whole thing is, okay, if we're gonna get, if we can assume that 14 points per game was what he was working with before all this other stuff happened, and that's his new baseline, because he started out slow, and we don't want to discredit that, but I think coming off the injury and, like you said, having to get used to basketball again a couple months, that makes complete sense. You know, hell, people are saying KD is not going to be KD as soon as he gets back from injury. You know, let's just keep it real, keep it raw, right? So if Lonzo, basically, if what we saw was healthy Lonzo, he was still able to give you 14, and let's just say that's a healthy baseline for him. Imagine, well, what do you think the increase will be now that he actually can say, okay, look, I didn't have the toolbox. Hell, now I know how to attack in the mid range. I know how to finish at the basket. We saw him working on the layups and stuff in that video. So actually using his body to protect the ball and get contact to get into the paint and get the shot and draw the foul to get the free throws. Like, if that stuff is coming, his increase on offense is going to overshadow Drew in the long run. So to me, it's like, are you going to pay Drew big bucks to sit back there and be a ball stopper essentially and not shoot effectively or as effectively as Lonzo? I think that's why, for me, I would rather get, I ain't gonna say I think, I know that's why I would rather move on from Drew. Now, if I could get Drew to just be like, look, man, you're going to be a 3-and-D guy. And I get it. You know, but hey, you said he's not as good as a three-point shooter. That's true. But he shoots it at a decent enough level. Okay? I just think, okay, for instance, if it were up to me, I would rather go get a guy, and I'm going to use this guy. Don't take it seriously because I know he's been performing bad in the playoffs. Danny Green. Danny Green was like 3-and-D. You guard multiple positions, and he can knock down at 39, 40, 41%, right? I would rather go get a guy who's like, look, I know what I am. My job is just to play hard defense and knock down a jumper. I think I can go get someone who's a little bit worse on the defensive end with a little bit more versatility, being able to guard maybe some power forwards too, because I think power forward on up is too much for Drew. He's just too undersized. But I think I would rather go get someone who's a little bit worse on the defensive end, but an upgrade in shooting. And I think that will benefit the team in general overall. Now, you can go say, okay, we can go get rid of Lonzo in that case, but like, what if Lonzo don't improve? Okay, fair enough. Let's tackle that. So if Lonzo don't improve, right, you're going to get, let's just say we get rid of Lonzo. So if we get rid of Lonzo, whatever guy we bring in, he has to be a better player in the half court. We don't necessarily care about the transition as much, right? So if he's going to operate in the half court, you're going to lose some other things because there's no, if whoever you're bringing in is going to be a lesser passer than Zoe. So the ball movement is going to go down a little bit. However, your half court efficiency will go up depending on who you get. So, and it also depends on shooting because Lonzo is projected to have an upswing. So, if you're going to get rid of Lonzo, you're also going to lose size at the point guard in all likelihood. You're going to lose the utility that he brings. So basically, what I'm saying is I think Lonzo brings a lot more utility so that even if, let's just say, if he stayed at 14 points per game, which is fine on that team with BI and Zion, I think you lose a lot more than you could get back versus with Drew. I think with Drew, you could ship Drew off and get a whole lot more back and do more stuff you need around the team than you could with Zoe. For Zoe to go, I think you sacrifice a shit ton. And so I don't think it's beneficial. Like whoever gets Zoe, I think is going to benefit from Zoe. I think Zoe is the winning player unless you tell me I'm getting somebody like Kyrie or, basically an all-star, which that shit ain't going to happen, right? So at least with Drew, like, you can go trade Drew and get. You can go, matter of fact, you can trade Drew and JJ Redick and go get a combination of both, essentially. Or you can go get, a combination of both in two different positions, like at forward and at guard, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Even though they kind of have that in Josh Hart. Josh Hart just don't have the handles that Drew have, or the passing, or the IQ. So, it's kind of like, what are you going to sacrifice here? But I think longevity in concern with this, I think Lonzo is the better keep, personally. Now, that's just versus Drew Holiday. Now, like I said, this again goes back to my other video when I was talking about how the front office and stuff do. I completely removed that from this picture. This is Lonzo versus Drew. I don't, and like again, let me put this to clarify this. If possible, I would like to keep both. I would love to keep both. And I think in an optimal world, I would rather have Drew come off the bench and be the point guard or whatever, or run the second unit. That's me. Now I don't think he's gonna be that or want to do that, but that's me. Hey, take a pay cut, come off the bench, keep him for sure. At that point, that be the sixth man. Amazing. I fuck with that. But like I said, I think Drew is the kind of guy that knows his worth and his value. And I think the only way he's going to do that is if he's on a team with someone like Kyrie and KD, where it's like, okay, I'm clearly the third guy here. And I'm okay with that. I'm going to carry the bulk of the defensive workload, and those guys are going to carry the offensive workload. And when one of those guys get hurt, I can kind of take over and step up, which is likely to happen with those two, specifically Kyrie. But it is what it is. So that's just how I feel about the Lonzo Drew thing. Like I said, I got much love for Drew. I've always loved Drew. I thought he was a great player, especially in the younger years. I still think he's a great player now. I just think his fit on the team next to Lonzo is compromising to both. And like I said, I don't ever see Drew hitting that 39, 40, 41% from three mark, and I would much rather feel that with somebody else who is maybe a little bit lesser talented, but can do or replicate some of what he does and excel in his shooting. So, yeah, this is my video on that. Peace.